Hi, everyone. Welcome. This is Adina, the host of the Immigrant Finance Podcast, and I am here today with Heidy De La Cruz. Welcome, Heidi. How are you?
I am great. Thank you so much for inviting me on. I'm so excited for this talk today.
Me too. Well, thank you for having me on your podcast
Yes.
earlier, and I'm glad we get to do a swap and now for our audience to hear about your story and all the amazing things you're doing. So yeah, I'll turn over to you if you want to go ahead and like introduce yourself and share what kind of podcast you have and all that.
Yeah, so like you mentioned, my name is Heidi De La Cruz. I am a podcaster and writer and poet. And my podcast is called The American Dream in the Eyes of Immigrants. And what I do is I interview immigrants about their journey coming to the United States, adapting to the new country, the culture, any culture shocks that they experience, struggles, challenges, and things like that. And the reason why I started my podcast is because, my parents are immigrants. They came from the Dominican Republic. I was born here, but just the story of immigration is very close to my heart just because, like I've seen my parents, struggle with the language, with culture here and, trying to keep the Dominican culture versus trying to adapt to the American culture and
Yeah.
things like that. So and I also started it because I want to help change the narrative that is out there about immigration, the negative narrative.
Yeah.
So I figured if we sit down and talk, share our stories, struggles, and the things that immigrants go through just to be in this country, to try to get a better life for themselves, for their family, I feel like that can change, the look of it. So I wanted to be more of an empathetic and compassionate look, like a Christ-like look of immigration. And what better way of connecting with people just by listening to their story? And the stories that I've listened to thus far have been so impactful, just like thinking of, even though I was born here, I learned Spanish first. So I can definitely relate with like going to school, not knowing the language, as a lot of immigrants who are children come, like they don't know English. So trying to navigate the school system, trying to communicate with their teachers when they don't know the language. So a lot of things I can relate. And
Mhm.
I've learned a lot of different cultures too that like bring me back to my parents, the Dominican Republic, and like our cultures too. So I love interchanging like culture,
Mhm.
common things, right, between our cultures. And I just love listening to these stories and just, picturing like their journey to get here. And yeah, so that's what my podcast is all about.
That's amazing. I definitely relate to a lot of that, like just loving hearing immigration stories. I've always been so touched by hearing people's stories, and I'm excited to hear your podcast more and dive in. And thank you for having me on. As you know, I'm
Yeah.
not an immigrant myself, so we talked about my experience being an immigrant in other countries when I lived in
Yes.
Egypt and Ecuador, and I believe we talked a little bit about how like why don't people say that's immigration?
Hmm.
You're suddenly an expat if you're an American
Yes, yes.
going abroad in those terms. So it was a really fun episode. But that's amazing that you've been sharing these stories and bringing light to the topic in a positive way, especially with your background as a writer and poet. I
Yeah.
bet, oh my gosh, you must have such an interesting angle. How does that shape your podcasting?
Yeah, so right now it's just a podcast, but I've been thinking about maybe writing out these stories, like these
Mhm.
conversations, just in case someone wants to read it instead of listening to it, because different people like to get things content differently, right? So I've been thinking of doing that, of adding like the writing aspect of it. But it's definitely, it's humbling too to listen to these stories. And I also want to also share like facts about immigration. So one of the episodes is with a immigration attorney, and he talked, about his experiences, his cases, listening to, the immigrant stories themselves, and just putting out facts about immigration, like the truth instead of, like the narratives and things that we hear out there.
Yeah.
So yeah, so definitely as a writer and poet, it definitely gives you like a different view. And
Mhm.
yeah, I want to be able to share these stories, in different platforms and different ways so they can reach more people.
I love it. We really, really need that. And and when I'll just add like with my background in immigration advocacy,
Yeah.
it's kind of known that the most effective way to change hearts and minds and help people understand, what immigrants are going through and how they're contributing to the country is through personal stories. So we actually do a lot of that, even in like the legal advocacy space. It
Mhm.
all comes down to that because that's how people connect, right?
Yeah. Yep, exactly. And just like you, like just listening to people's stories, like afterwards, I'm just like, wow, like that was such a great conversation. And at the end of the
Mhm.
day, we're all humans. We
Yep.
all have emotions, we all have feelings, and it's not easy leaving your country, leaving your culture, leaving your language, your food, and starting over in a new country. And it's something that is not an easy decision, and it's not, and not everybody does it. Like I think it
Most
was
don't.
no, yeah, I think you had posted a reel talking about like the statistic of how many people actually come compared to like the population. So I looked into that and I was like, yeah, not that many people actually leave their country. Yes,
Yeah.
when they migrate, the majority do come to the United States, but it's like, how was this country built and
Yeah.
founded? It was founded by immigrants. So
Exactly.
it's like, like not a lot of people leave, and when they do, they come to this country because they know the opportunities that are here. They know the resources that we have here. And it's just yes, this is a wonderful country, but it also has its flaws, and
Yeah.
we talk about that very honestly and openly in the podcast. Not to like put America or the United States in a bad light, but it's just like the reality of being here.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. I'd love to hear next a little bit about your own family's immigration story and or whatever you feel comfortable sharing about just your connection to the topic personally.
Yeah, yeah. So when I was older or a little bit older, I actually found out that my mom was actually born in New York, but she was raised in the Dominican Republic. So my parents met in the Dominican Republic, and I believe it was right before I was born that my mom moved, because she wanted to be with family here in New York. And so since they were already married, she had brought my dad over on
Mm.
I believe a spousal visa.
Mhm.
So I think it was 3 months after I was born is when my dad told me that he met me. So he wasn't there when I was born. Yeah.
Oh,
So
okay.
it was like 3 months. He was like, "You were this tiny little thing." I was like, "Oh." So
Oh.
they went to New York first, and then my dad had a traumatic event where he told me that he was robbed at gunpoint in New
Oh my
York.
goodness.
And so there was a friend of his who had lived in Grand Rapids, Michigan, and informed him like, "Hey, there's, a lot of factory jobs here. If you want to leave New York, you can come over here." So they decided to move to Grand Rapids, Michigan, and that's where actually I was raised. So even though I was born in New York, I don't know much about New York. I visited,
Okay.
but my hometown is Grand Rapids, Michigan.
Got it.
So I lived there until I was 21.
Mhm.
So my whole life.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a long
And
time.
so 2014 is when I moved to Florida. And yeah, so I've been here ever since. Slowly but surely, my family had migrated to the United States.
Mhm.
Most of them, I believe, had residencies. So
Mhm.
I believe it was like my great grandma. She was a citizen, and so she was able to get residency for her kids. And so
Mhm.
slowly but surely, like my family, just trickled in to the United States. So now we're all here. A lot of them started in Michigan because that's where we were at first, and then we
Mhm.
slowly started moving to Florida. So it's like we've been like migrating from like states to states.
What was the
Um,
spur to go to Florida?
I'm sorry,
What was the spur to go to Florida?
get out of the cold. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, makes
Being in the
sense.
Dominican Republic is always hot, right? And so like going to Michigan is I want to say a climate shock, like the snow and the cold and everything. So my dad actually had an injury in his back in the factory that he worked. and that the cold would cause a lot of pain, a lot of
Oh,
discomfort in his back.
wow.
I
Okay.
believe he said like if it wasn't for that, he would probably still be in Michigan. But it's since the injury, he was like, I can't take the discomfort anymore. So he moved to Florida. I believe my aunt was the first one, and then and then
Okay.
slowly again, like my family came. And then once I had my daughter, I was by myself. So I was like, why am I in Michigan by myself? So
Yeah.
I just came to Florida too. Yeah.
Oh, it's amazing. It's very
Hmm.
cool. Thank you for sharing that story.
Yeah.
It's nice to hear like all the family coming together and setting roots in new places.
Yeah. And I've asked my family too, like, would they ever move back to the Dominican Republic? But the majority will say no. We'll visit and this and that. But it's like once you get used to just living here, it's completely different to adapt back to, how it was over
For
there
sure.
or
Oh
how it is
yeah.
over there.
Yeah, I've been seeing even my husband go through that with Ecuador where he's from, and he's
Yeah.
only been living in the US for about 10 years, almost
Mhm.
10 years. And like the last few times he goes back, he's just like, I can't even take the altitude anymore. And he's from
Oh, yeah,
Quito where
yeah.
the altitude's really high. And he's
Yeah,
like
yeah.
experiencing it now like I do. Um
Yes. So,
uh,
like, for example, like my daughter goes out on the summers to see her dad in Dominican Republic, and
okay.
she tells us how like there's no hot running water, right? There's no hot water, so it's all cold water. So, like, her grandma will have to like warm up some water for her, to even to shower, and they
Yeah,
still have the issues where sometimes the electricity leaves randomly.
right.
Like throughout, it could be like the whole day, it could be like half a day, but it's like they still deal with that with like the
Yeah.
electricity leaving. So yeah, it would be very hard for them to like readapt to living
Hmm.
back there than what it is here in the United States. And once you visit other countries, you can just tell right away like how blessed, and I want to say spoiled, we are
Oh
in the
yeah.
United States, because there's just so much convenience here and
Yeah.
so many things that just make life easier that other countries don't have.
Yeah, and we were talking about this in the episode on your podcast about it's kind of like this, I don't know what the term is, double-edged sword. Like there's these pros and cons, right? Like it can be more convenient here, but there's other things that are missing that
Yeah.
you can experience more easily in these other countries, that like just like enjoying time with family and food is just like easier there, sometimes
Yeah.
it's just more
Yeah, my
simple.
Yeah, no, definitely. My daughter's 8, and she told me that the food in the Dominican Republic is better than here. And I was like,
Oh
you are
yeah.
absolutely correct, ma'am. Like it is.
Yeah.
You are not lying. She can tell the differences in the juice, because it's
Yeah.
fresh squeezed juice from fruits, right? It's not
Yeah.
like it doesn't have like the process that we have here. But then also you have to think about like just depending on where you live in the United States, right? So let's say you're in Michigan, it's hard to transport like the fresh fruits,
Right.
all the way up north because, you
Yeah.
can't grow fruits in the winter. So it's
Yeah.
definitely understandable. But yes, like you mentioned, there's just certain things that are very just different in other countries.
Very much so. Yeah. So in terms of your podcast, back to that, I loved hearing about what you're doing. Tell us about like what led you to actually start the podcast.
So I had an itch to start a podcast. It started in 2019, and it was not this at all. It was like I wanted it to be just like talking with friends, sharing like what they're doing and things like that. But 2019, I was finishing my master's. So I was like, okay, I don't have the time for that right now. 2020, the world shut down. So I was like, okay, definitely, dealing with my own mental health issues during that time. And then 2021, I was pregnant. So I had not, I didn't have the easiest pregnancy with my son. So, that was my focus in 2021. So I was like, okay, this is a year. I'm going to do it. I graduated, not pregnant. So I was still trying to like picture like, okay, well, how am I gonna do it? Who am I gonna have on? What are we gonna talk about? Am I gonna talk about variety of topics or niche down? So then I am a writer on Medium, and I read an article about this migrant who came from Kenya, and her article was about just how when she moved to the United States, different culture shocks kept diminishing her confidence. So it's like first it was the language barrier, right? A lot she came across a lot of Americans who wouldn't even try to understand her and would like kind of like dumb down talk to her, like kind of talk to her like she didn't understand. So like that diminished her confidence a little. And then it was like the food, you know, she was missing her the food from Kenya a lot. So like that like brought her confidence down. So it was like wow, like it's just thinking about that. And then after I read the article, I asked my husband actually, because he's also from the Dominican Republic. I was like, what was your first memory of the United States? And him and his family migrated from the Dominican Republic to New York, and he was 9. So he was like, I just remember seeing such tall buildings. Like that's all I remember. And then he said his first meal when he came was hot dogs. Like, and they ate a bunch of like so much hot dogs. Like, to this day, he can't eat like, he doesn't like hot dogs.
Oh,
So he was just like telling me his first memory and like
yeah.
the feelings that he had. And at 9 years old, and he remembers it vividly, you know? And I was like, that's a podcast episode right there. And so, like,
Yep.
that's where the idea came. And I was like, you know what? I can interview immigrants about, you know, cultural shocks and for them to share their stories because it's important. And I haven't come across, I mean, I know you interview immigrants and you have, you know, a background with immigration and have people share their stories, but besides that, like, I haven't come across another podcast like it. And so I was like, I feel like this is very important, you know, it's close to the heart and it's, you know, it's starting, you know. And now that I've done it for a while, it started in March, and now that I've, you know, have a couple episodes in, every single person has thanked me for creating a space, creating the platform and
Love
creating a
that.
safe space, yeah, to share their story. You know, just like you, like I don't ask if they came legally or illegally or anything like that. If they're comfortable sharing, they do. If not, you know, like that doesn't matter. So yeah, so they just thanked me for creating a safe space, and then I'm just like, I feel in my heart fulfilled, you know, that I'm providing the space and sharing these stories. And so like now I definitely want to get more involved in the immigration, you know, the best way that I can, because I actually at one point did want to become an immigration attorney. And I went as far as I took the LSAT and everything to
Wow.
try to go to law school. Yeah. So I didn't do as well as I wanted to in the LSAT. So then I was like, trying to figure out what other routes, you know, that I could help. And just recently, I was thinking about donating because, you know, I have the poetry book. So I want to donate a percentage of my earnings to a charity. And so actually yesterday I was researching like different charities to see which one I'm going to choose to donate. And I actually found a nonprofit organization here in Florida that helps immigrants. So like they ask attorneys to do like pro bono cases.
Yeah.
And so yeah, so I've been searching like different immigration
Amazing.
organizations to donate. I also found one in California. I can't remember their names right now, but I also found one in California whose mission is to help reunite the families that have been separated at or the kids with the families who's been separated at the border. So I'm kind of debating as to like if either do both or one or say, but I definitely want to give back and help and be more involved.
That's incredible. I love hearing that. It's amazing. Yeah, I definitely can give you the down low on all the immigration nonprofits because I work in
Oh,
that
perfect.
space in my day job.
Yeah.
So happy anytime. Yeah, there's so many amazing organizations doing
Mhm.
incredible work, and yeah, I've just been amazed at the community that's, you know, there's so many people that really do care about immigrants in this country
Yes.
and supporting them and, you know, fighting for their rights. And that gives me a lot of hope because there's a lot of people out there like
Yeah.
that we just don't hear about it. You know, it's
Mhm.
often like that work kind of happening behind the scenes.
Mhm.
I hope everyone listening knows there are a lot of people who fight every single day to make things
Yeah.
better.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's so great that you're thinking of you know, extending the reach of the work you're doing in that way, and I wish you the best with that.
Thank you.
In terms of like starting a podcast, I would
Mhm.
love to hear your thoughts on why maybe it's important for people in this community who are immigrants, family members of immigrants, to think about sharing their voice too and starting podcasts.
Yeah, it's important because their stories matter and what they're doing matters. You know, a lot of the people that I interview, they have their own businesses. And it's crazy because, we hear like, oh, immigrants are coming to steal our jobs, but it's like we're creating jobs,
Yeah,
And
totally.
yeah, totally. And I love, and I definitely give them the chance to promote their business. Like, yes, talk about it. Why did you start it? How can people reach out to you? Because it's definitely important to hear what they're doing, hear their story. So if there's anyone out there who may be afraid or just don't know how to take the leap of faith, just know right now that your voice matters. We need to hear your voice. We need to hear your story. You can think like, oh, there's so many other people doing it, but it's not you. Like we bring our own uniqueness to everything that we're doing. For example, you have an immigration podcast, I have an immigration podcast. It's a little bit different, but here we are collaborating and sharing our own stories and sharing our voice in our unique way, right? So if
Yeah.
anyone is thinking of starting a podcast, I say do it. If you don't know how, there's lots of resources out there. I'm always willing to help anybody who has any questions in the way that I'm doing. I honestly started by Googling, honestly,
Yep.
how to start a podcast.
The best
And it was
way.
a little overwhelming, all the
Yeah.
information out there, because there's a lot of different podcast platform hosts. So
Mhm.
you just have to like try to see which one works best for you. I use Anchor just because it was like, I think it was like the first one that popped up when I Googled. And so I was just like
Yeah.
looking and researching and reading, and they make it really easy to transfer to different platforms.
Mhm.
So, yeah, so if anybody has any questions, I'm always willing to help because I'm also big on following your dreams. Like
Yeah.
in addition to all this that I'm doing, I also have a 9 to 5. I am a medical specialist coder for the hospital. So after my 9 to 5, I'm doing what I'm doing now. I'm being a guest on
Incredible.
podcasts. I'm doing my own podcast host and writing. So I definitely feel that, this land of opportunity, we got to take advantage of it. Like we can
Mhm.
do anything we set our minds to. And I love how you always promote, like, don't let your immigration status hold you back. Like there's ways that you can do this, follow your dreams, open your business and things like that. So yeah, it's definitely very important.
Yay. Thank you for sharing that with everyone. It's so true. It's so true. Anyone can start a podcast. I was terrified when I started one. Oh my, I never thought I would start a podcast. It was never on my list, honestly. It just kind of happened and someone, a mentor really pushed me and
Oh,
I was really, really afraid. I was like, this probably means something if I'm really afraid.
yeah,
Because it's
yeah.
like after a while, if you keep seeing the example when you're really afraid of something and then you do it, it's usually there's some reward there, right? It's like
Hmm.
you're afraid for a reason.
Yes. I recently had heard Do It Afraid. I think it was my friend
Mhm.
who told me because I had told her that I wanted to start doing poetry slams, which I haven't done. And she
Ooh,
was like, do it. I was like, but I'm scared. She was like, do it afraid. Like, and I
yeah,
was like, okay, I like that. Do it afraid. Because like you said, like after you do it, it's like, I did it. Like it's done. And then you realize it's not that bad,
not that bad.
It's
Yeah,
not that bad. It's more of the anticipation of it. And
yeah.
honestly, like I used to hate my voice on recordings, and now like it doesn't even phase me,
I
like
still can't listen to
oh,
mine.
you can.
I cannot.
Yeah, so do it afraid. So I completely understand. It's like, and everybody has to start from somewhere. Like
Yeah,
we all start at zero, right? We all
right.
start at zero, but then once you get going, it's like anything that you practice, right? Like we don't start off learning how to walk, but we take one step at a time and then we learn how to run and so on and so forth. So you start at ground zero. Reach out to people who are doing what you want to do, to see if they will help you, and yeah, like it's just do it afraid.
Yeah. Yes. And oh my gosh, there's just so many reasons like that people should think about podcasting. I mean, it just like financially, since this is a financial podcast, it's
Mhm.
really helpful if you're starting an online business because it's one of the best ways you can actually connect with people and build relationships. Like if you just think about it, someone flipping through Instagram, they might see a post you do or reel for like 5 seconds or something. But if someone's listening to a podcast, they're sitting down and listening, or maybe they're driving or they're working or like cleaning during it, but they're listening to a whole long piece, right? And getting to know you. So it's really helpful for business development. And like you said, we need more people in this community to share their voices. It's so important, and it's one of the fastest growing areas of the online space, right? And it's really like democratizing, whose voice is shared. You don't have to get published, right? Or be on or get on a TV show or something to share your voice anymore. You can just start a podcast for free. I use Anchor too. It's free.
Yeah,
It's completely free to have a podcast.
Yeah. And I want
Right?
to go back to when I started, like my very first episode, because obviously, like, I had no idea what I was doing. And in my very first episode, you can hear, like, I had connected the microphone, but I wasn't able to hear my guest, which was actually my cousin. And so you can literally hear us like, hey, can you hear me? No, can you hear me? And I was going to edit it, right? And then once I was listening back to it, I was like, no, this is so funny. This is authentic,
Yeah.
And honestly, I've gotten the most feedback about that episode. Like people telling me like, "Oh my gosh, that was great. Thank you for keeping it." Because it was, it's authentic. Like I had
Yeah.
no idea what I was doing, but I did it anyways, and it's out
Yeah.
there in the world. Yeah. So definitely back to that. Do it
I
scared.
love that. I remember one of my early episodes, you'll hear me talking about how I'm on a walk with my daughter during maternity leave, something like that, or while she was sleeping. And I was like testing out these new earbuds.
Yeah, definitely. I even recorded because again, Anchor makes it so easy that I do a lot of them on my phone. So there was one time that I did a recording on my phone in my car. Like like I was out with my family and I was like, okay, family time, but then I also want to get this recording done. So I took, 30 minutes, went to the car, did the recording, and then I went back with my family. So again,
Amazing.
it's like super simple
Yeah.
to do it. Yeah.
I appreciate you breaking it down because I think people might think it's this whole production, but it
Yeah.
doesn't have to be at all.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. It's just, you're on your phone. You start off with that, and then as you go, then you can just see what you need, and honestly, like you don't need much, like just I don't know. I mean, I'm just trying to like, try to see if I can inspire somebody, like, just to do it.
Well, okay, that brings me to a question I want to ask you that I
Mhm.
think would inspire people to hear your response as a poet and writer to this. What would the world look like if we had a lot more people in the immigrant community starting podcasts?
Oh, that would be beautiful. Just listening to all those different voices, honestly. Um, like I had mentioned to you before we started recording, I went yesterday to networking event for women entrepreneurs in my city. And a lot of them were actually thinking of starting podcasts in addition to their business to provide tips, to provide just in addition to the business to provide tips and things like that. And I'm like, yes, do it. And a few of them wanted to be on my guest, but they were again like just scared, like kind of intimidated. But it's like we need those voices. Like if especially migrants, just to show the world that, we're worth it. We're here to stay. And
Yes.
there's a purpose, everyone has a purpose. And
Very.
sharing, I just find that so important, just sharing your story, sharing your voice. Again, just because we're all unique, so
Mhm.
that would be so beautiful if we had more migrant people just sharing, starting their podcast, living their dreams. And it's like, if we can do it, they can do it too.
Yeah. I love that so much. It just makes me want to share too that just so people know, I'm like scared all the time when I'm recording.
Right? Yes.
Like it doesn't go away. It's not
Yeah.
like, oh, you get experience and then you're fine. No, it's still scary. But you just
Yeah.
said it, it's about showing up again and again and again because there's a larger purpose why you're doing it. Like, before I hit recording, I had to delay because my daughter was having a tantrum. And you hear
Yeah.
me having like a little bit of a cough right now, but I'm here, right? I'm
Yeah.
here. Thank you
Yeah.
for being flexible with the
Oh,
time.
no, of course. And
Yeah.
I also wanted to add, when you mentioned the whole being nervous thing, nothing, you don't have to do it perfect. We're not perfect, and people love when people are authentic. Because, we always see on social media like the highlight reels and everything, but people really like to see authentic, like be authentic, be yourself. Like,
Yeah.
like you mentioned, your daughter had a tantrum, so we had to deal with that. And sometimes in my recordings, you can hear my kids in the background, my son, because guess what? I'm a mom. I'm a mom of two.
Yeah.
So it's like, it is what it is. Like, I remember there was a reel I was recording, and, my son was yelling, and I was like, I'm not going to re-record this because I just can't. I don't have the energy. Like,
Yeah.
So it's just like show up as yourself, and
Right.
people will draw to you. The people who need to hear your story will draw to you, and yeah, and they love that when you are your authentic, real self.
People relate
Yes, and people
100%.
relate. Exactly.
100%. I've had a few times during consultations I do where my daughter will pop in. People often see the door opening. She comes and sticks her head.
Oh, it's so
But then they
cute.
see like I'm a real person, whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I'm a mom too, and a lot of people are moms, right?
Yes. Oh my goodness, yes. And that's another reason why I also like to share like behind the scenes stuff, because it's a lot to juggle, right? Being
Mhm.
moms, being business women, being podcasters, and things like that, and having a 9 to 5, and it's a lot to juggle. And so I recorded a video with my son on my lap, and I was writing a blog post, and it's like, you know what?
Oh,
Yeah, I was like, you know what? This is real. This is me, because
yeah,
I have things, I have dreams I want to fulfill, and I also have duty as a mom, and you
right.
know what? Like, we can do it. We can do it. But also take breaks. People, take breaks,
Yeah,
You don't want to burn yourself out. You also want to listen to your body and take rest and take breaks. But
absolutely.
like you said, we are human. We have the kids, they pop up and things like that. So,
Yeah.
but we're still here. We're still doing it.
Oh, I love that so much. You have so much wisdom to share with people.
Oh, thank you. I try.
Yeah. No, I'm just really glad you have a podcast because I can tell there's a lot you have to offer and share with people. And on that note, if you had to pick the number one thing as of today that you would want to share with people about whether it's your podcasting journey, developing your career, your online presence, even finances, is there anything that comes to mind you would want to share with our audience?
Yes. Anything that you want to do, you can do it. You just have to put the work behind it. And you are going to have challenges, and you are going to have hurdles, but that's just part of the journey. You look
Yeah,
back, if as long as you don't give up, you can look back and it's like, wow, I went through this, this, and this, but here I am. And then that becomes an inspiration for others. So then you can
yeah,
share, your struggles and inspire other people. So that's why I really like to show, like I said, the behind the scenes, really can help and support anybody that I can, along the way, just because I've struggled, to get the
yeah,
podcast going and to get to where I'm at in my career. But I say just start, like, dreams are there for a reason. There's a tugging in your heart for a reason, because we all have a purpose, right?
right.
And I say, like, start doing progression towards it little by little, because this is not a race, it's a marathon, and
Mhm.
the journey is worth it, once you see your dreams being fulfilled. As a writer, I've just published my first poetry book, and I just did my first book launch party, and I never in a million years thought that I would do that, especially when I started writing. And so it was like, wow, like I really, slowly but surely worked towards this. And then now I'm here. And I've had people ask me, like, where do I want my podcast to be, like, in 3 or 4 years? And I haven't thought that far ahead, to be completely honest, because I'm just starting. But I would want, it to be just shared with as much people as possible, to reach as much people as possible. And slowly but surely, as long as you stay consistent, it will get there.
Yes,
Mhm.
it's inevitable.
Yeah.
I love this saying, like, if you can see it, it will happen. But if
Yes.
you can see it, like there's a reason you can see it. Kind of what you're saying.
Mhm.
If you have a dream, there's a reason for it. You have a purpose for that. We don't
Mhm.
have those dreams and desires just to tease us and then they're not
Yeah.
possible. Like there's a reason, but you do, as you said, have to put that work in
Hmm. Yeah.
to
And
happen.
it's not gonna be easy, but it's worth it, like
Yeah.
you have the setbacks and everything. Like I remember when I was trying to do the self-publishing, like there was this challenge that I just couldn't get over. Like I got really frustrated. Like I almost cried of frustration. I was like, why is this not working?
Yeah.
And so, sometimes you just have to take a step back. And I was like, you
Yep.
know what? Okay, with this frustration, I'm not going to be able to get through. So take a step back, take a breather, maybe take a day or two, and then, come back to it. So I was able to, get over the hurdle, but it wasn't easy. You sometimes have that. It's like the frustration and things. But if you really, really want it, you will continue to go and you will fulfill your dreams.
Thank you so much for sharing this, and I know it will inspire a lot of people, Heidi. And where can people follow you and listen to your podcast?
So my podcast is available wherever you listen to podcasts. So I'm available on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Castbox, Amazon Music, Spotify, and Anchor. And it's called The American Dream in the Eyes of Immigrants. You can follow me on Instagram. That's where I mostly hang out. My username is my name, which is Heidi, Heidy, period, De La Cruz 13. And there I have the link to everything, to my blog, my podcast, my book, my writing. And yeah, so if anybody has any questions or anything in regards to podcasting, or they want to be a guest on my show, I am always looking for guests. No matter which country they came from, I'm trying to get, from everywhere. So if anyone of your listeners is willing to, share their immigration stories, I am more than happy to listen to them and share it on my podcast.
Thank you for offering that. That's really awesome, and I'm sure a lot of people will want to get the word out about all the amazing immigration stories,
Yeah.
that there are that people need to know about, and to humanize this issue,
Yes.
right? It's just
Yeah.
way too political, but it's
Hmm.
really about people.
Yes, exactly. Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Heidi. I really appreciate you coming on the show, and I look forward to continuing the conversation.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks.